So many thanks to you all for listening, of course, to this brief presentation, and to the organizer group of this event for giving the opportunity to deliver again a brief update on what's going on around BIBFRAME, especially in Europe. And as Roberto mentioned, Leif Andersen, had the habit to be with you during this recurrent meeting, and this presentation that you will see now owes a lot to Leif, as also all the, since 2017, BIBFRAME Workshop in Europe initiatives. As you know, the sixth workshop took place in Europe. BIBFRAME Workshop in Europe took place in the second part of September at the National Library of Hungary. It has been a hybrid event with, as you will see in a moment, a good number of people in presence, but even more connected remotely. Of course, this focus of the meetings has always been the transition from MARC to linked data using as core ontology BIBFRAME, but not only BIBFRAME, and how now to bring all this more and more into practice. These are some numbers about the participant persons, and it's, I would say, interesting to see that many countries were represented. That means there is an interest to move toward a new bibliographic ecosystem in general, where certainly, cooperation and dialogue, the different communities is nowadays even more probably important than in the past. This is a very brief overview of how the initiative has evolved in the last years. I go a little bit quickly so that we can, meet the lunchtime on as much as possible on time. As you know, these are some of the, together with the links that you will find in a moment, some of the outcomes and the organization aspects of the BIBFRAME Workshop in Europe initiative. Among them, the dialogue with the RSC, the RDA steering committee that initiated in 2018 with a letter exchange about aspects of common interest. The organizing group members are listed here. There has been a change, and I will talk a moment about this in a couple of slides. 23 presenters contributed to the program this year, and the organizing group had some changes, as I mentioned. So the National Library of Finland is now represented by Mattias Frosterus instead of Osma Suminen. Hannes Lovagi of the Royal Library of Belgium joined the group, as the Royal Library of Belgium will host next year workshop in September 2023. And Bjørge Vestli of the National Library of Norway joined the organizer group. My role is, I took over Leif's role as spokesperson of the group. We are very grateful, of course, to be in Central Europe next year. So thank you again for the Royal Library of Belgium for hosting the initiative. Let me very briefly come to the program, because this touches some aspects that I think are really cross interest, there were three sections, one about BIBFRAME in operation, one about new developments and one about interoperability. And at the end, two panels, one about on interoperability and one about, what, let's say, has a library to do in order to go toward this kind of new environment. My aim was to tell you a little bit more in details about the content of the various presentations, but you can find all this online, so I don't use time on this. It's certainly, useful to mention that this year, even more than in the past, the focus has been on implementation. So, how really to switch from a theoretical phase that has been incredibly important and also incredibly, intense in the resources and intellectual work that has occupied many working groups in the last several years. How now this progressively in the various kind of configurations that are different library per library, this can now go into progressively into practice. These are the presentations of the new developments section of the program we had last September, and interoperability. Of course, interoperability means a lot of things. As you know, also certainly better than I do, interoperability means interoperability of data, and therefore, among different authoritative data pools. Interoperability means model interoperability, therefore mapping among different data models. It means also what, within brackets, sometimes is called record interoperability, meaning in this case, per record, all elements that describe a specific library resource, and where the interoperability is different and has different, let's say, declinations depending on how much a library system is caching the data. So there are two extremes: a library system that has everything also locally stored, and a library system that has that refers through the URIs and to the external data pools. In one case, in the latter case, the advantage is that, the retrieved information is always updated. In the other case, of course, there must be a number of, trigger events or messages or alerts in order to update the records that are needed locally for operational purposes or for the discovery interfaces and so on. And then we had two panels. Again, one devoted to interoperability, and the second panel on what a library has, how a library should approach, an implementation of BIBFRAME, or, of course, of a linked open data environment based also on other ontologies. Taking advantage of the opportunities that must be, of course, also be sustainable and possibly more sustainable than in the past, to maintain, the complex and even richer, bibliographic content. And this brings to, especially to two or three, paths. One is the so-called entity management, that is really a new level of cooperation among institutions to maintain quality level data in the future. Copy cataloging, that maybe in the future we will call, what we could call shared cataloging, and in order also there, to apply a different approach than in the past, and then discovery, where there is really a change in paradigm, on how the content can be made available, how access to knowledge can be organized, giving more visibility also to areas, and let me say also to research in original languages different than English, that in traditional union catalogs or OPACs and in Google are suffer sometimes from the visibility that they deserve. And of course here, the various level of the data models with various levels of abstractions help very much to organize data and to put at disposal to researchers, students, and the general public really a new mode to access the knowledge, and that is really crucial for so many reasons. Let me end with something that I think we all share. So dialogue across the library communities is crucial to foster the progressive implementation of the various components that together build the linked data bibliographic ecosystem. Collaboration among the communities involved will influence the choices that the various institutions and organizations will have to make and the directions they will take. Keeping in mind, of course, that each institution, each library, each organization is different, and we must preserve the different that often is an added value. For example, also in sharing data, where a lot of intellectual work has been done in different places around the world, and where bringing together in clustered knowledge bases the reconciled entities must not mean lose data that, for example, in specific disciplines and so were created also following different rules or different habits. And therefore, the provenance of the data is an aspect that in all the implementations should kept in mind and should be able to be retrieved. So I stop here. I'm at disposal, as of course the entire organizer group of the BIBFRAME Workshop in Europe, for any feedback and interaction, and please refer to the website where you can find the presentations, the abstracts, and also the recordings. Thank you.